3 from Miss Emery. Miss Ambarchian, would you like to ask the question relating to Werrington playing field on behalf of Miss Emery?
Yes, good attempt at my name. Top marks for effort. Ken Stimpson School has several outdoor areas for sports and has used the public open space that surrounds the school for many, many years without any issue, as have lots of sports groups with young people. The fence that is proposed isn't an Ofsted requirement, and it hasn't been mentioned in the last couple of Ofsted reports for the school. The risk assessment that kind of backs up the reasoning for the fence wasn't actually completed until after planning application was submitted. And actually the risks identified in the risk assessment do very little or nothing to mitigate the risks that were identified. And that's not my view, that's according to the school's own commentary. Pupils will still use the area outside the fence. So the question is, why is safeguarding being given as the reason for the fence? And to be clear, we're not, this question isn't about challenging the planning permission which has been given. It's challenging the installation, which is still very much within the hands of the council to decide whether or not to go ahead. The council's basically given itself planning permission. It's the council's land. You can choose not to go ahead with installation. Will you take notice of these comments and the objections from Werrington residents? Just for context, there are over 1,200 people that have signed the petition against the installation of the fence. And we can verify the postcodes for 800 of them, which are Peterborough people. 200 have signed an open letter giving their addresses in full and names, and 400 people have joined the Facebook group. So the question is, why is safeguarding being given as a reason for this fence? And can the council rethink the installation?
Councillor Hazel, would you like to respond, please?
Yes, I would, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Nyree, for your question. It's a little bit, we have a number of questioners around the same subject. You'll be aware, I'm sure, as will members. It's not easy for me to answer any questions about children's safeguarding, I'm afraid. It's not within my portfolio, and so I'm unable to answer the questions you asked specifically about child safeguarding. You say you have no issues with the planning process, which is pretty much where I come from. And I was a member, you'll be aware, I know, because we've exchanged emails. I was a member of the planning committee that sat, I think, on the 10th of March when we decided this application. So I'm sorry to say to you, from a child protection point of view, and whether or not the council as the landowner has the right or not has the right to go ahead with any installation in conjunction with the school, because it was the school that made the application, you'll be aware of that, and it was the headmaster, the principal of the school, that was actually at the planning committee meeting arguing the case for committee members to approve. So that has to be my answer, I'm afraid. I can't answer your specific question. If there's questions about the planning process, I'm more than happy and completely able to answer that. My colleague, Councillor Ayres, is the Education Cabinet member. You'll be aware of Councillor Ayres, I'm sure. I don't know whether Councillor Ayres wants to actually chip in with your particular question or not. Lynn?
Yes, I can do. Good evening. I have looked into the safeguarding aspect from the point of view of the local authority, of course, because we are the people who are responsible as well for safeguarding and making sure that that is happening. And the council's been working in partnership with the school over several years to reduce safeguarding risks associated with the open nature of the site. Work has been undertaken which has successfully helped to mitigate the risks from the shared school vivacity use of sports facilities at the site. However, other significant safeguarding risks remain, and these relate to the school's need for outdoor playing space, which is currently open access to anyone who wishes to access it at any time. As a consequence, the school hasn't been using the playing field for around 12 months, placing restrictions on children and young people's ability to benefit from a full range of outdoor sport activities. The installation of a fence was identified as a means of mitigating the safeguarding risk and supporting children's health and well-being. Because safeguarding of children and young people is one of the council's statutory responsibilities, alongside its role as champion for all children. And schools are judged by the Office for Standards in Education, Ofsted, on safeguarding measures they have in place when they do their visits and their inspections. And any identified failings can lead to a school being identified as requiring special measures. So the focus rightly is on prevention and reduction of risk. As part of the planning application process, the interim education safeguarding lead for Peterborough was asked to consider the safeguarding concerns which had been raised by the head teacher and the proposal to install fencing as a means of mitigating these. Her assessment was that the installation of a fence would improve the school's ability to safeguard children and young people. And this was recorded in a letter, as I understand it, which was submitted as part of the planning application process and is therefore a matter of public record. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up question, please?
I do. My follow-up question, everything that Councillor Ayres said makes a lot of sense, and it's very, very difficult to argue with the words child safeguarding. As a parent, I know that. The real substantial part of my question is that by the school's own risk assessment, the major risks identified will not be solved by this fence. So I suppose everything you've said makes complete sense, except when you consider that. That's not really a question, is it?
Well,
no, I mean,
if I might come back on that, Mr. Mayor, you know, the council was presented with a planning application. The planning application followed due process. You'll be aware. There was representation from the ward councillors. There was representation from objectors. There was representation from the applicant in the form of the school principal. So as far as the council's procedural methodology is concerned, it's without question, you know, we've done the right thing. So what you're asking, though, quite rightly, I have to say, quite rightly, what you're asking is whether or not the fence should be there or not, or if it should be in a different place or whatever. I mean, I personally can't comment whether the council can exercise any rights we you know, the council may or may not have as landowners in that regard. I don't know whether Councillor Ayres has got anything to add to that.
And the only thing I probably can add is that there was a site visit there by our safeguarding lead in early January, very early January, and as part of that site visit, the changes were reviewed and the proposal to have the fence put up, and that was the basis upon which her later assessment, which went forward into the planning application, was made. Apart from that, I can't add anything on behalf of the local authority because, as Councillor Hiller has said, of course, the application was made by the school itself quite properly.
Thank you.